This video is sponsored by Aquashine Exteriors, professional jet washing and cleaning services across Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, including Dorset, Hampshire and Wiltshire. Are you feeling it's time to get that driveway nice and shiny for when you come home, or are you wanting to get that guttering tidied up and spotless again? They deliver this, plus much, much more. Please head into the description below where you'll find their details for their website, including the socials, Facebook and Instagram. You also need to find their before and after portfolio. You can also call them on 07503 998 088 for a free quotation. Don't wait till next week. Don't think you'll do it another day. Pick up the phone, give them a call, check them out.
Hello, Cherries fans. Surprise and welcome to another Cherries Red Army preview. Yes, I've been brought in from the reserves today to take the place of Kirk. Unfortunately, he was taken ill a bit this evening, but don't worry, he's still okay. He's just taking a rest and he will be back. Today, we're going to be going over the Leicester match that's coming up. We've still got great guests to come on. We've got Mark and Steve from the Cherries Red Army family, and we've also got a famous face, you could say, to go through the Leicester match. Let's go into a match preview for the 9th match of the season.
Cheeky one, square, and
Yes, welcome, Lee Chappie, to the show. How are you doing, my good man?
Thanks for having me on. It's been a bit of a mad day today, I'm not going to lie. As you've seen on your Twitter, I sent you a photo of me eating my dinner only 10 minutes ago before we prep. So there's no prep here. I've come straight in. So I'm hoping I can hold my own here.
That's absolutely fine. It means there's a proper fan reaction. No spiel, no prep. No. We're going all shooting from the hip today. So moving on to Leicester, we're going to be talking a bit about the game coming up. But firstly, how do you feel that the team is getting on this season, some 8-9 games in?
I think the turning point, hopefully, was Monday night against Forest. Having said that, the last 18 months have been a little bit worrying. Set piece coaches has been a problem as well. Set pieces across the last season and obviously the start of this season, we've probably been bottom in the country, let alone the Prem. And that's both ends. That's attacking and defending. But we've now got the set piece coach in, and I think we could actually you could probably see that against Forest. Actually, we had improved a lot. So I'm hoping that was one of the problems. Obviously, losing Kasper Schmeichel hasn't helped. I think he was a leader on that pitch. Quite loyal as well. We've been with the club a very, very long time, moving from Leeds back in 2010, 9, a long time ago. And losing Fofana, obviously we'd already previously lost Fofana through injury, and then comes back going through the whole, getting back fitness and stuff with the club, signs this extension, and he's committed to the club, and then the next thing you know, he's playing silly games and he's out the door. Did that affect the dressing room? Did it affect all these sort of things? Can take a season apart, so to speak, and that's kind of where I thought we were at. Brendan out. It's kind of like a thing that was going on as well for quite some time. I don't think it's gone away yet. I don't think he's got away from that yet. One game so far, finally get some points, on the table, but got to beat you boys. And I think we've got to beat Palace. We've got to beat Leeds. And then we've got Man City. We've got to get more points. If Brendan's going to save his job, he's got to beat you boys. And I don't think we've got a very good record against you. In fact, I don't think we've ever beat you at Bournemouth.
I'd have to look back through history as to ever, but I do know the last 2 games we played you at home, we've scored 4 goals, which is a bit of an interesting one. And certainly your defensive record has been iffy recently. But most recent game, there is definitely some positivity there for Leicester fans. Obviously, a 4-0 victory, which is something that which is something that Bournemouth fans would be quite pleased about as well. We've not got the best relationship with Forest fans right now. How did you feel the game went overall? Obviously, great set of 3 points, but how did you feel the game was? How did you play?
Yeah, we absolutely we battered them. As the chant's been going, Forest get battered everywhere they go. Everywhere they go. That was even on the darts last night on Sky. So
I saw your retweet of that.
On a serious note, that was a banging game to watch. We did completely destroy them all over the place. However, I am going to say, if they scored at the start where they hit the post, if that went in, and if they could sit back 11 men behind the ball, made it really difficult for us. We could have been, having a different conversation tonight. But the boys played really well. And James Maddison, I don't know if Gareth Southgate's, I don't know what he's got against him at this point. I really don't. Whatever it is, there's clearly an agenda, because I'm sure you will agree he must go to the World Cup. He has to.
Yeah, I think there's a really big conversation about that one. Just a big thank you to everyone that's joining us live for the show. Thank you, Sammy. Thank you, Mark, for joining us. Hello, Cameron.
Winksy's here too. He's a moderator. He's my channel manager.
Hello to Winksy, and also to James saying hello. Legend Lee is a Bournemouth fan, but clearly well aware of you.
Yeah, he's actually a subscriber as well.
Oh, really? Brilliant.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. So, one of the things that I think one of the big things about Leicester, certainly at the start of the season, was your transfers and your complete lack of them. And obviously there's a lot going on in the background regarding that one. There were a lot of things that I was hearing about, that it wasn't necessarily funds, but it might more be just that you can't get players out at the moment, which is preventing you from getting new ones in. It's a difficult situation, and it's led to, I think, a level of stagnation, would you say, at the start of the season?
Yeah, it's never nice to start a new season with no new players as such. We've brought in this centre back, Belgium international, Wout Faes, his name is. It's got a bit of a sideshow Bob sort of thing going on, but it looks okay. But obviously, we need to see him, for at least a few more games yet before we get a real idea. But it was worrying, because you've seen Kasper Schmeichel. I didn't really see any rumours about him leaving. So it happened, and surely we've got to get a goalkeeper. No, not going to get a decent goalkeeper. No, just going to get a third choice keeper instead, and hope for the best with Danny Ward. And I don't think Danny Ward's quite Premier League class. I really don't think so. Anyway, you guys might do, but I just don't see it myself. So that's already the start of the season. I was thinking, gosh, we're going to be weak at the back here. No Fofana, no true goalkeeper. What's going to go on? And I don't know if it's about the amount of money that we've maybe didn't get because we didn't qualify for Champions League, or it's the amount of money maybe we spent on wages for some of the players that we have brought in last season. That's obviously affected our FFP, our net spend, so to speak. I'm not quite sure. There's no real answer. I've not seen any real answer from the club either. It's not like they're going to come out and say it. The pipeline is looking, there's been a ground expansion in the works, and that got the go ahead by the council and everything. So that's definitely coming into play. So maybe all the money is going into that. It's an investment into the club, just like the training ground, £100 million facility. I'm sure you've seen that. Maybe they're just focusing on building the club and then working around it afterwards. But it's no good having all these flashy things if you're not in the Premier League. That's the problem.
Absolutely. No point having a fast car if it's going to stay parts in the garage all the time.
Exactly.
Kirk is watching in the background. He's hope you're doing well. Kirk, he said that your details will be below about your YouTube and socials. So if you're interested in following Lee for more info about Leicester and what he does, please do check him out. And I'm sure you'll absolutely love what he puts out on his socials. You mentioned before there's been a lot of talk, and I think quite rightly so, although maybe a bit harsh if you consider that how close he's been to being a real big success with you, is the manager. He's had his hands tied a little bit, like we were talking about with transfers. I think he definitely has expressed his dissatisfaction at the fact that he hasn't got any players or many players in. what do you think is the general feeling about whether you want to keep him around or not at this stage? Because I think he's certainly done a good job for you over the years.
Yeah, sometimes you have to take, as a fan, you've done this before. You have tinted glasses on. You just do. You boys have red ones. We've got blue ones. Sometimes you've got to take them off. We're Leicester City. We're not bloody Man City. We're not Liverpool. We're not one of the big six. I think sometimes you've got to take them glasses off and realise what you have been given and what you have achieved. We've broke the top six twice. We've won an FA Cup, which now I suppose isn't this glorified massive thing, but believe it or not, back in the day, that was the one that all clubs chased. That was the one, we have won some stuff, but having said that, I get what the fans, I get it. I do get it. The expectations have gone through the roof since winning the Premier League. I think that's only natural. Having some Champions League football, winning the Prem, I think it does escalate the expectations, especially the younger fans. Because you've got to remember, I'm 36. I've seen Leicester in the League Ones. I've seen them in the Championships. I've seen us yo-yo in. When I was a kid, we were yo-yo in. Some of these kids that have supported the club since they were like, I don't know, 6, when we were winning the league, are now, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And they only know success. So they're the ones that are like, Brendan out, which I get. I understand, totally understand. So it is, I think it's a Marmite fan base because it is quite a local fan base. Leicester's supported by Leicester people, generally speaking. We're not a franchise club like the Big Six. That's what I call them anyway. And I think you've got that mix of old and new still, just based on age. So it's tough. I'm not a Brendan out guy. I have shouted it once or twice based on his subs and based on his press conferences after the match. The post-match conferences are what trigger me off, when he blames the fans for the loss, or he blames the dark side of the moon. It's something that's not his fault. It's never his fault. He's never just gone, I got it wrong. I made the wrong sub. That's what triggered me off.
Yeah, I do think that. I think Brendan has shown that he can be very good. You wouldn't get the Leicester job. You wouldn't have got the Liverpool job at one point if he hasn't clearly shown his abilities as a manager. But I do feel as though there is a level of arrogance to him that means that he could. I feel as though he's a kind of manager that is never going to manage below the level of, or never going to want to take a job below the level of, upper mid-table side in the Prem anymore. He just feels as though he's too good for that. At this point. Now, obviously, at the moment, unfortunately, you're down on 4 points, 1 win, 1 draw, and Bournemouth are actually, as I think most people would be surprised to find, is 13th in the table, doing relatively well.
Undefeated. Yeah.
What have you made of Bournemouth so far this season? What have you seen with regards to, obviously, we sacked Scott Parker after a run of bad games, but similarly to yourselves and how you feel about Brendan Rodgers' post-match interviews, it was the fact that Parker couldn't keep his mouth shut after the Liverpool loss that really meant that he got the sack of that one. But we're doing pretty darn well compared to expectations.
It's tough when you're in that sort of position as a manager. I can imagine it is tough if you're not being backed. If you're not being given the funding and the fans are going at you, and what do you do? Who do you blame? Do you do your hand, put your hands up, go, I got it wrong here, I got it wrong there? Or say, you know what, in fact, boys, I'm not being supported. Because I thought that was harsh on him. But that's from an outside perspective.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people would have appreciated that. But at the same time, I think we all don't know the full ins and outs of what's going on behind the scenes, the other end. And clearly he decided that he was going to take that approach with the upper base and go, right, back me or sack me. And the board obviously took the decision that he didn't like. But
did he get sacked after? Was it after the 9-0 that he got sacked?
Yeah, directly up. It was about 3 days afterwards.
Do you think it was the result that got him sacked, or do you think it was his comments about the board?
No, it wasn't the result. It wasn't. We were all very confident it wasn't the result, and it was because because he basically said the players weren't good enough and that he needs more money, he needs better players, and without the players, we can't compete. And since then, since he's been sacked, we haven't lost. So clearly someone was wrong. And the fans are quite happy that Parker, in the end, has taken this negativity and he's been moved aside. And O'Neill has done a pretty good job so far. Unbeaten in 4, and we're pretty darn happy with things. We're pretty happy with the way things are going right now. How do you see? I mean, you mentioned that you think you definitely need to be going to Bournemouth and winning, and I think I would totally have that opinion if I was a Leicester fan as well. But realistically, given how you're doing going forward and defending, and how Bournemouth are quite tight in both, how do you think it's going to go?
Well, we like to play possession at the minute. We do seem to have all the possession in games. I'm looking at some of your previous possession stats here against like Newcastle, for example. You 27% against 73. But possession is one thing, but you've got to score the goals. Leicester at the minute, I think they finally woke up. James Maddison has fired something going on. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the international break, but we look more energised. We looked so energetic against Forest. I do feel like we're going to go at you full pelt at this game. I do feel we're going to go. It's not going to. We're not going to sit back. I think we do go full pelt, and I do think we're going to take the lead. But Leicester's problem seems to be holding on to a lead because, again, as you just mentioned about defending, that's a problem we've got is defending. And you boys, am I right by saying you've scored a few from set pieces this season?
Yeah, I think we've scored. We've scored at least 3.
Well, we're not even.
Yeah.
I don't even think we're on the tally. That's the one. That's the one you've got to play. You've got to play the set pieces because it's still there. It's still. In fact, I think it's definitely scarred the club for quite a while now. I think because it's mentally there. The boys are so worried about letting one in that it keeps happening. I think set pieces is where you boys need to attack us.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely going to be part of the plan. You mentioned possession. We do have the lowest possession stats in the league at the moment by a comfortable margin, but that's sort of how we're playing at the moment.
Who's your top goal scorer? Is it Solanke?
No, it's Phil Billing at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Phil Billing with 2 goals, but Solanke has got 1. But we're not high scorers at the moment. It's but we're also keeping it pretty tight. We're keeping it pretty tight at the back as well. But before I let you go, I can't move on without getting a final score prediction from you.
I'm going to back on this time because I've not been very confident, and I said we'll get battered by Spurs, and we did, and I said we'll batter Forest, and we did. I think we're going to beat you boys 2-0.
Yeah, very confident. That's fair enough.
I feel we're going to beat you boys 2-0. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Who do you think would be the goal scorers then?
Who do you think? It's going to be James Madders. Maddison's going to score. I think Maddison gets 2.
You think you get both? Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly a decent shout, and he keeps knocking them in. He'll be certainly knocking on Gareth Southgate's door the way that keeps going. But anyway, thank you very much for joining us for this preview, Lee. Make sure that you check out his stuff in the description down below and go subscribe to him and go follow him on Twitter. And thank you very much for joining us for this preview, Chappie.
No, thank you for having me on.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Well,
see you guys.
Thank you very much. And we're going to move on to the Bournemouth part of the preview.
Cheeky one, square, and
Well, look who's joined us. It's Mark and Steve. How are you doing, guys?
Very well, mate. It's a bit of a rogues gallery's joined you, isn't it?
That's one way to put it. At least you put yourself in that little group.
Oh yeah, totally. I'm the head of it.
Well, John's come
Nice
from the subs bench. We come from the reserves, mate, haven't we?
Yeah.
I was a last-minute call-up. Don't give me that. But nice to see you both. Nice to see you both again. And obviously, we're looking forward to the match on the weekend. Let's start though by looking back at how our last match went. 0-0 draw obviously could have been better, but definitely could have been worse. Mark, what did you make of the 0-0?
I mean, let's just take it for what it is, mate. At the end of the day, we initially thought that we were all going to be in a little bit of turmoil in that. So, the fact that we're starting to make Dean Court a fortress for ourselves now, these are all big results, mate. Every single point, especially with the teams around us, it's all going to be massive. So, I won't lie, I've not seen the highlights. From what I saw on social media, the game wasn't that exciting, apart from a good performance I hear again from Senesi and from the rock that is Mepham. I'll say it again. It's a massive result. Every point with teams around us, they are going to be huge. And let's go again for another one, and let's hope for a big 3 points this weekend, mate.
Absolutely. Steve, from the
sorry, just choking on my coffee. Go on,
Steve. From the only person around here that definitely was at the game. You were at the game, were you not, Steve?
I was. Yes.
How did you make it? What did you make of that game?
It's a bit of a cliche hangover game from the international break, wasn't it? I sort of predicted this before the start of the game. I thought it'd be a very tight affair, and it turned out to be like that. Very few chances created by either side, which is a little bit disappointing. I think Gary Neal's touched on this in his press conference, where he said it's a bit of a shame we didn't. They weren't really at it, and we didn't really punish them, which was a shame. But as Mark's just said, another outstanding performance by our two centre backs, who Senesi looks like he's fitting in nicely now. He's adapting a bit. He's getting up to the speed of the game. So, yeah, I thought all in all, 0-0 was a fair result. But I think if any team should have got 3 points, it should have been us. If it wasn't, VAR being our friend for the day, but it wasn't, as usual.
Yeah, I could put out a whole video on that on my own. I definitely
thought you might be able to
those two decisions, but the positives, of course, is that we kept another clean sheet, as Amanda points out. Still the only defence, literally, in the world this season to have kept Haaland at bay. Just we couldn't keep the other four out as well. But we currently have 3 clean sheets at home. No team in the Premier League has got more clean sheets than us at home, and we do go up against the Leicester side next, to certainly a bit more goal happy than the last few opponents we've kept clean sheets against, but they also are a little bit vulnerable defensively. The defensive record is also one of the lower ranked in the league as well. I was trying to find another way of saying bad. So it's not been great for them. So with that in mind, it's going to be an interesting one. Strong defense versus a good attack, and a weak attack versus a weak defense.
That screams 0-0.
Yeah. Is that, I'm not going to ask for your predictions right now, but how do you see this Leicester game going? Because it's going to be a tough one to keep out the likes of James Maddison, as Chappie quite rightly pointed out.
Go on, Steve. I'll let you dive in on this first, mate.
Yeah, may I say, what a lovely setup he had, by the way. That was a bit fancy, wasn't it? But yeah, anyway, I tend to disagree with Mark a little bit on this one. I think this could be a little bit of a switch around from last week's game, and it could be a bit of a goal fest, because I watched them play against Forest earlier in the week, and I know it's easy to beat Forest. We even give them a head start and beat them. Anyone can beat Forest, but they have an abundance of attacking talent. Let's not cut about beat around the bush. They have goals from all around the pitch in forward areas, and that worries me considerably. Equally, the caveat to that, as we've just said, very, very poor defence, especially the centre-backs and the goalkeeper, I think. And I think if we're going to exploit that, I think he should go with Dom and Kiefer again, and try and use our prowess at set pieces, Kiefer Moore's ideal for that. But I think this could be a bit of a basketball game, actually. I think this could be a bit of a ding-dong battle. I'm hoping it is, because the last 2 outings to Dean Court have been snooze fests. So fingers crossed for some goals.
Yeah, I mean, fingers crossed. Just pulled up the table here, and yes, I'm remembering back to the fact that I knew Nottingham Forest had the worst goal difference, but I didn't realise Leicester had the worst defence in the league, actually, with 22 goals conceded. As Chappie said, it is set pieces that continues to be their weakness. But 14 goals scored is, quite a lot. I mean, that's more than double what we've scored. So, yeah, will be interesting to see sort of whether it is going to be a Bournemouth game and a 0-0, or if it's going to be a Leicester game and it's going to be a 3-3 or something along those lines.
Well, considering that we kept Haaland out, mate. I mean, Vardy should be a walk in the park, really, shouldn't it?
It's just the rest of the team you got to worry about.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, we had that with City, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Keep the main man out, but unfortunately, there's 9 others that are going to do you damage, isn't there? I mean, when I was listening to Chappie earlier and I was backstage, I was kind of sort of agreeing, because I was saying it in my head as well. It's with our set pieces prowess, and the fact we got the likes of like Kiefer, and really, I believe we'll probably see like not many goals from like open play this weekend. It's definitely going to come from like corners. I reckon there's going to be a free kick in there as well. So even though I did spout out about a 0-0 against the immovable object and whatever the continuous force in that, but yeah, I mean set piece wise, I think Gary O'Neill has done a great job now with sort of steadying the ship, steadying the players, and getting us on, a competitive footing. So now it's really a case of we've got to sort of start springboarding onto that. It's great being continuous with that, but now we've got to be, I say, a bit more braver in that. And hopefully, well, you never know with this whole American takeover chip and that, maybe there might be a bit of a buzz around the town of that, maybe a spring in our step. So maybe that might, bring a bit more extra fortune for us this weekend.
Well, you mentioned the takeover. There has been something reported in The Athletic. Obviously, it was widely shown on Twitter that the fact that that Bill Foley was making a trip into Bournemouth arrived yesterday, and then watched. I believe he watched a training session today, as was reported, and apparently it is rather close. Now, there are definitely positives and negatives to any takeover. But I do feel as though this is being mostly treated as a positive step by the fan base. What would you say, Steve?
Well, anyone wanting to give us 120 million, it's positive in my view. But
it's mental, isn't it?
I know.
Who'd have thought?
I know.
Our little old tin pot Bournemouth, 120 million. What?
It's an absolute bargain. That is. It's absolute bargain.
Yeah, it's a deal.
No, it's one of those. Like you said, John. There's always a plus, and there's always there are always there can be minuses, but on the whole, looking at his background, I mean, he's done wonders with the ice hockey team in Las Vegas. He's, brought them out of, he's basically just built them out of nothing and got them up into playing top level ice hockey. So he's a very into his sports sort of guy, from what I've been reading. So that only bodes well as far as I can see. The only issues I've got with it is, this is a bit of a weird one, right? Bear with me, but the guy is 77. Am I right in thinking that?
Well, he doesn't look 30, does he, Steve?
Well, no, but he's quite an elderly guy, and I keep thinking to myself, if the worst happened, what then happens to us? Who then gets control of the club, or what happens after that? So that's a little concern I have. But if it's going to take us on to that next level, then I'm all for it.
I think for all of us, it's just a case of now, as a club, as a whole, and as a fan base, again, we're now stepping out of our comfort zone. This is something completely new. In the fact of, when Max came in and took over from Eddie, that took us on to one level, and now this is, now that we're in the Premiership, and from sort of the rumours about the whole, there's going to be money in January, the possibility of, again, the stadium conversations, as well as the continuation of the training complex, this is now going to be taking us on to the next level. So yeah, of course, at the moment, all the wording is going to be, positive. So I think we just got to strap ourselves in and enjoy the ride for this.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's getting the infrastructure up and going like we haven't been able to do previously, because we've been concentrating on the playing side. of the club. So yeah, that's the big plus. Big plus. If we get all that training complex built and maybe do some little additions to the stadium, maybe even buy it back. Who knows? Possibilities are endless.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's definitely the one that interests me a lot in terms of whether we can sort of buy back bits of the stadium and sort of that's the next step, I guess, is the stadium move. But certainly, if we can guarantee the training ground rebuild and rebuild it to a good enough standard, because I know that the current plans, I think, are slightly pulled back from what we originally submitted because the funds aren't quite there as much as it was 3 years ago. So yeah, it's an interesting. I'm broadly behind it, and I think Max cares about the team and the area, I think, too much to not hand it over to someone who's going to at least treat it in the right way. But I mean, fingers crossed. 2 years from now, we're not complaining like Man United fans about their owners. But you never know. We'll see what happens. Now we have had a presser. We have had O'Neill coming, giving his views to the media today. Certainly it sounds like we're doing well in terms of getting some bodies back, I think is probably one of the biggest things there for me, because Fredericks, I think, is close, but maybe not guaranteed. I think Pearson's meant to have had a full week of training, and Rothwell, the mysterious Rothwell, seems to also have had a full week of training. So we may end up having some new faces on the subs bench for the game coming up, Mark.
I mean, Rothwell, who again, I think as I mentioned earlier, but Gary O'Neill at the moment is all about having that bit of continuity, and I don't think we're really going to be seeing many changes in terms of like the team structure, the way that we set up. I think at the moment, we're finding a good rhythm at the moment, and the players understand the way that Gary O'Neill wants to play. What do we say about Fredericks? Is he in line to be in the team this weekend? I thought probably a bit too late for him, I think, or something. So I think from what I saw, the way he performed against Forest, that could have been a great little addition. Trying to get forward and trying to pin Leicester back in that sense. But I'm sure Smith can do a job in that sense. But look, at the end of the day, if as long as Senesi and Mepham keep performing the way they do, and I will say, Neto as well for the time being, as long as they can continue, performing the way they do and just keeping the goals out, then there's always that opportunity for us to nick one.
Yes, Kirk was asking what you thought about the Neto versus Travers thing, but I tell you what, we'll get into that. We'll get into that when we do our lineup prediction. How about yourself, Steve? I mean, we've not seen Rothwell since pre-season, where I think from the sounds of things, I mean, actually, to be fair, you're probably the only Bournemouth fan that's actually seen Rothwell play in a Bournemouth shirt, aren't you? So, how are you looking forward to seeing him, or do you have any opinions either way on at least I suppose getting some bodies back is always a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, the Rothwell anomaly, as you might want to call it, or whatever it is, what I don't know what was actually wrong with him, because it looked quite innocuous. I think it was, I can't remember which preseason game it was, but I think he got a knock in one of those games. But prior to that, he'd been quite a driving force in the team. He'd been one of those players who picked up the ball, he turns, he looks to drive with the ball, a bit like Lewis Cook in a way. But he has a bit about him where he wants to drive the team forward by himself, not necessarily just play the quick pass, which I do like. I think we're lacking those sorts of players within the team. Heather was there, but it's a shame we haven't seen him, because I think that at times we have this. And Heather's not going to like me for this. Is that Billing? We sort of idolise him a bit for scoring goals, but the rest of his game at times can go a little bit missing. And I feel like Rothwell would be a direct competition with Billing, and maybe push him. Hopefully, that's the idea, to keep his levels at a consistent level, a high level, and not have those dips that he sometimes has. So getting Rothwell back is a massive plus, whether he plays or not, in my opinion, because he would be pushing Billing for that spot, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Rothwell's a player I'm looking forward to seeing eventually and seeing what he can do, because I do think he's a little bit different to pretty much everyone else that we've got at the moment. Apart from, he's probably most similar to Tavernier in terms of it. I think he's a very good dribbler.
Yeah.
On the ball, but we've
it
got
just
good
lacks the pace
competition.
that Tab's got. I think that's his only downfall.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on, I suppose we better look at the formations and how we think we're going to be lining up against Leicester. It's going to be an interesting one, because when we compare it to what happened last match, this is what we ended up using. 4-4, basically 4-4-2. Solanke playing behind Moore. The interesting one for me, obviously, was Billing playing at left mid, and that for me just didn't work at all. And I have to say, I think Solanke Moore partnership didn't work that great for me either. I think it's going to need practice, but it certainly didn't. It didn't quite gel in the way that I was hoping that it would in the last game.
John, just on that partnership up front, do you think that there's a case for Moore to be deeper than Solanke? And win the flick-ons for Solanke to run onto?
I think it would more be that you'd like them to play to right next to each other. I think ideally, but the thing is, when we're defending, we definitely need one of them to drop back to help out defensively, and that's probably going to be Solanke.
Yeah, probably not
Moore. More one that you want to be sort of winning the long balls. The problem is, particularly against Brentford, you had two very big, very capable centre backs in Janssen and Mee, who didn't let Moore have much of a sniff. Moore won more than half his duels, but the ball pretty much never landed to a Bournemouth player, and that was most of the problem. So,
but what I found is that Moore was ending up getting dragged wide, running into the channel to get balls where he should have been the guy in the middle, waiting for those balls to come in.
Yeah,
and I think if you've got a couple times. If you've got Solanke making those runs into the channel and then whipping the ball in for Moore, that just to me seems to make a bit more sense. Maybe you're right. Maybe you get them a bit more alongside each other, but I felt Moore sort of was ineffective because of that a lot against Brentford. Yeah,
absolutely. So I suppose the big thing here is, for me, formation. I'm pretty sure that O'Neill has played 4 different formations in the 4 different matches that he has been the head coach for. What do you think we're going to be playing this time round? And please, chat, do get involved in this as well. I'd like to hear what I'd like to hear what everyone else is thinking as well in terms of formation. We've started with the 3 at the back. I don't think that's going to happen this time round, because without Kelly, we don't really have the third centre back consistently to put in there. And so it's probably going to be the same back 4 and goalkeeper. But what are we going to do with the rest? How do you think we're going to set up? Do you have any ideas on that one, Mark?
Yeah, I was just kind of looking at that, and really the only thing I can think about sort of changing on that would have been, not that I would like to do it, because I am very much a Moore advocate, but I would actually probably take Moore out, Solanke up, put Billing in as 10, and then put Christie on the left there.
So back to sort of a 4-3-3.
I mean, you can keep it in that sense. I mean, I suppose in some ways, you can fight fire with fire. And if Leicester are sort of scoring goals, the best thing you can try and do is try and keep them pinned back in their half. Because again, if defensively, they're not that great, then like I say, if we were to take Moore out, put Solanke up top, Billing in the 10 role, and then put Christie in there.
Put Christie wide. So you'd have Billing up top.
And sort of number 10 role, I would say.
Okay. And certainly, I think a lot of people probably agree that Christie probably deserves to come back in, particularly after his good showing for Scotland. And I definitely would rather see Billing played centrally. I think that's something that a lot of people would probably quite like to see. I know Heather certainly also agrees. This is pretty much a 4-3-2-1. Oh, that's interesting. It's a bit more central.
Oh, she's been watching Liverpool, isn't she?
Yeah, definitely. Like the old Christmas tree formation.
I just, I don't know what it is. I just seem to feel that at the moment, Moore is not so much of a starter for me in that respect. I think he's more of a, let Solanke do the doggy work that he does. Let him wear the the back line down. and then bring more on, with that extra spring in his steps, so we can, get above the players, window setters, be strong in that sense. I always feel like he is our plan B in that sense.
Steve, what are your thoughts on the formation? Do you think it's something more like what I've got on screen now? Certainly.
Yeah, I was actually I was hedging my bets towards a sort of 4-2-3-1. I definitely think we need to pack the midfield a bit more against Leicester than we did against Brentford. Purely because they've got some talent in there, like some Maddison and Didi, and they've got Dewsbury Hall, there's Barnes, there's loads of them. They're all talented players, and if we lose that battle in there, I can see us, it being a tough afternoon for us. Ideally, I would like to see us go back to a back three, but we can't do that, as you said, because Lloyd Kelly's just not there to do that at the minute. Because I would like to keep Moore and Solanke up top. I think that's the way we're going to have to. If we play like that, that's the thing we're going to have to sacrifice. Because I think about their two centre backs, whoever it's going to be, probably Soyuncu and
Valpace.
Sorry, Val. Yeah, not Soyuncu. Soyuncu's not really played, has he? Has it been
Evans? I think
Evans.
Also. I don't know whether he's fit or not,
but I still look at their centre backs and think they're not the greatest. Even their first choice. And I think if we got about them having the two up there, I think that would really cause them a problem. I just don't think we can afford to lose the midfield. And I think that's where this sort of formation will benefit us. And I agree having Bill in central, because he was a waste. It was a waste of a player out on the left. And Christie definitely for me will come back in. I think he was just rested after his international break. Really, that was the only reason. But he was actually superb for Scotland over 2 games that I saw. Thought it was really, really good. Yeah, so yeah, I'll go with something like that.
Yeah, well, Heather puts the eternal question about other players. What about I'm guessing that's meant to be Sariki rather than Sarikid.
No, he'll get Everton.
He hasn't got a look in it yet. I mean, I think he's very definitely sort of 4th, maybe even 5th choice winger. I think Anthony's ahead of him, Christie, Tavernier's ahead of him, and Rothwell, when he comes in, is quite possibly ahead of him as well. I mean, I do feel a bit sorry for the likes of Sariki and Lowe, because they're just they're not really getting any kind of a look in. Lowe's played like 1 minute against City coming off the bench, and Sariki hasn't had a single second of Premier League action yet. I mean, it's got to be tough to be that. I mean, some of us have definitely played in Sunday or Saturday league teams where we don't get much of a kick, and it's not fun. To turn up on a day and not play for 90 minutes.
I mean, you may have done, John. I start every game.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, John.
I was in better teams than you two. It's fine. I had to.
It is a tricky one with Sariki, but obviously we've got well, they've got another month to go, but we've got the Everton FA Cup game coming up as well. We all know at the end of the day the league's going to be the main priority, of course. So that's an opportunity, and it's at home as well. So why not give some of the fringe players a chance? Like the Lows and the Sarikis.
Well, I mean, Steve, I think that Christie will almost definitely be the one to come back in on that left-hand side. But I do think that I would quite like to see Jayden Anthony get a shot at some point on that left-hand side. And I wouldn't mind seeing it this game. Something that, for those of you who probably are aware of James Lawrence Alcott, who's a really good channel that looks after Football League and Premier League. One of the things he talked about with Leicester was how much that Maddison comes inside. Maddison plays off the right generally, but comes inside so much, he doesn't support his right back very well. And I think this could be a game that, particularly if you get Anthony, Zamora, Billing, you get that partnership back together, that could do a lot of damage to a right back that doesn't get support from his winger. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, Jayden Anthony, I feel sorry for him. To be honest, he's not really put a foot wrong, has he? Comes up with the winner at Forest when he was brought on. But I think that's the way Gary seems to want to utilise him, as a more of an impact player, which is strange because we've never really seen him do that before, really. And you would think more, it's that sort of thing's more suited to someone like Sariki, for example, who's got lightning pace and he's got a good flight of foot. I I'm not convinced. I said Christie'd come back in, but I'm not convinced he'll play on the left. I know he did play there for Scotland. But it's an interesting one. I think Gary will stick with his tried and trusted, and I think unfortunately Jaden Anthony will miss out because of that. But it is a good point you make, John. But I mean, Christie's still, if he could just add the goals to his game, as we all keep saying, he'd be an absolute dot. I mean, he probably wouldn't be playing for us, but he's a really good attacking threat. What was quite interesting to see him when he played against Scotland, because he doesn't get to do it a lot of the time because he's on the other side of the pitch. But in getting to the byline and putting in crosses, which were actually decent crosses as well. If we've got the likes of Kiefer up there, who knows what Gary's going to go with. It could play, it could benefit us. Could benefit us massively. But we'll see what he comes up with. But it is one of those. I think Sariki and Anthony Lowe, like you said, they're probably going to get more of their chances against the likes of Everton, like Mark said, who are coming up. And it's there, it's those games that they need to sort of really stake a claim to say, I'm here, I'm ready to go, and I'm a decent, I'm a decent cog in this big AFC Bournemouth wheel. So please, Mr. O'Neill, utilise me more.
But this is what's great about this squad, though, because you look at the players that we're talking about, and they each have a slightly different dynamic to one another. So O'Neill has that opportunity that we saw it against Forest. If he needs to change something tactically, he has the ability to do that. We're not just bringing on a like for like. So there's nothing to say that Anthony can't come on and again, affect the game in an important way. And
he's a very versatile guy as well. I mean, we've seen him play wing backs before. I'm sure I've seen him play up top in a couple of under 23 games previously. So yeah, he's adaptable as well, which is great.
Yeah, I think. Well, I remember when he was going through, I thought he was a striker, and then obviously playing as a winger, he still did a really good job. I suppose I did say we come to it. Mark, what? Sorry, that's not the right one. That's the right one. What have you made of Neto coming in? Seeing as I don't think you've been on the channel since obviously Travers was. I say
I've been crying into a pillow.
It was unfortunate for him. I think it was the right decision to take him out of the firing line after a game that would have damaged his confidence, no doubt. But Neto has essentially not put a foot wrong, or at least certainly not been punished for any of the small mistakes that he has made. What have you made of him so far?
I'm pretty much sort of seconding what you just said there, John. I thought it was right for Travers to be taken out of the firing line. It's big occasion, big stadium, big club, and unfortunately against him, it's a big result as well. So mentally from a goalkeeping perspective, albeit you're looking back at those goals, there's not really a lot he could have done about many of those at all. So I think every Cherries fan was probably waiting to see him come back into the sticks, more than likely after the Wolves game for sure. But ultimately, I'm all here for what's best for the club, and if the manager thinks that at the moment and given the current performances, Neto's he's got more experience. You look at the clubs that he's been at as well. They're not exactly little old Bournemouth, are they? So he has been around with some of the big players in world football. So initially, I thought he looked a little bit flappy. I thought he reminded me a bit of Boruc. Bit. So I just couldn't wait for something to go slip through his hands and so forth. I mean, a bit like that one at Forest in the last few minutes when he came out, he kind of flapped at a punch to a degree. I was thinking, oh god, can't go through all this again. But the results speak for themselves. Since City's been in, there's been solid performances. Whether it's a case of his communication has been a lot better as well, given that he's not from the UK, so experience as well will play massively into games as well, whether that be like positional wise. Again, communication as well is always going to be massive. But as long as the results keep coming, then hey, do you know what? Keep him in. I'd rather see my club still in the Prem come the end of the season. Travers will get his chance. No doubt. Again, we have got the cup matches, and I'm sure he's learning a lot from Neto as well. So it is all positives in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I could certainly see Travers coming back in if something happens, but he does definitely have the cup games at the very least. But I'm sure he'll be after more, which is a good thing.
I think the only problem is we're sort of running out of songs at the moment, aren't we? You know, with old Cardi gone, you know, Travers on the bench, and now, you know, what are we singing at the moment?
We've still got 2 for Dom Solanke, and we only use one of those. So so. Coming to the end, I do want the chat to start putting their score predictions down on record. What do you think the score is going to be? Is it going to be a goal fest? Are we going to be able to drag this into a 0-0 draw again? Is it going to be a snooze fest like a couple of our recent games have been? But before that, I've asked Mark about a goalkeeper. Steve, we know you're the centre-back of the group, although I was a centre-back in my day as well before an injury took me out into early retirement. How have you made of Senesi and Mepham? Kirk has asked how you think we're going to be stopping the likes of Maddison and Harvey Barnes, but obviously they're the wingers in this group. But just our defence overall, I was pretty confident our defence was going to be better than most people thought, given that we had the best defensive record in the Championship. But Senesi's come in, done brilliantly. Mepham wasn't playing last season, and he's been amazing. Kelly, obviously, top assister, as well as being one of our fantastic centre-back. What have you been making of our setup defensively?
Well, it's difficult to really read too much into it because it's changed so many times. But I mean, in the last few games we've played, where you've seen that partnership of Mepham and Senesi develop somewhat, it has been. I think the key to it all is actually not either of centre backs. I think it's Adam Smith personally. I think he really he's taken on that senior role within that back four, and you don't really. He goes about it very quietly, and you don't really notice. But he's actually talking to them all the time. He's the senior voice. They listen to him. They obviously respect him massively. He's been at the club for God knows how many years. It's got to be over 10 years, I'm sure, albeit over a couple of spells. But I think Adam Smith is fundamental. Every manager has picked up on this, come and gone. Woodgate, Parker, Tyndall. They've always had him in when he's fit. So I think having him there has been a real calming influence to the other two. And they've come on leaps and bounds. I mean, Mepham, he did make a mistake on Saturday. Not many people have spoken about it, where he gave a ball away very early on and Neto was forced into a save. Comfortable save, but he was forced into a save. Those sorts of things for Mepham previously weren't going for him. As soon as he'd make that mistake, we were punished. And now he seems to have got that little bit, maybe it's a little bit of luck on his side, but it's just that, his confidence is up a little bit. He's had a few good performances, and those sort of things aren't happening to him like they were before. And that's only a good thing. Senesi, on the other hand, he's sort of, it's almost like he's feeding off of that. And he's become, when we first came in, everyone was a bit, this guy's supposed to be brilliant, and he looked a bit dodgy in a couple of games, and we thought, but then he was dropped, and then we thought, well, Lloyd Kelly gets an injury, he comes back in. From what I've been hearing, he's great on the training ground. He's great to have around the club. He's really sort of knuckled down and trying to work on his game for the, like you've pointed out, John, the Dutch league is a bit of a basketball league, and this is a completely different style of football, and it's probably something he's not been used to before. So it's going to take him a bit of a while to do that, but I think he's getting there slowly. I do like the fact that he is it's not overly, I don't find him overly tight to marking players, but he likes to get into a tackle quickly, doesn't let them like to have too much time on the ball, which I think is a good thing. So I like him, what I'm seeing of him in the last few games. And the other thing, Jay-Z, a lot of people were dubious whether he would make that step up again. And equally, he had a shaky start when we first couple of games, and thought, was this a bit too much for him? But the last few games, and maybe this all ties into a certain person leaving our club, who knows? But he has looked a different player. He's back to the old Jay-Z we know and love. He seemingly can do it without his mate in front of him. He's getting on the ball like he was in the Championship. He's bursting forward. And he hasn't really been caught out too much defensively that I can think about. Maybe the cross, from Newcastle that led to the handball. He was caught out a little bit, but again, he's still a young lad and he's still learning. But there's loads more positives from his play than there has been negatives, absolutely, this season. So Yeah, it's a nice little thing, and we got likes of Fredericks to come back into this. Maybe Lloyd Kelly's coming back. I mean, we got from where we were in the summer, going, "God, we haven't got any defenders," to now we're sort of we've got quite good options.
Yeah, no doubt. And I took a small detour in my latest Sparky Stats video just to point out how well Zamora is doing, both offensively and defensively. That his numbers are stacking up really well. I was surprised at quite how strong he's looking at the moment. It's definitely one of the shining lights.
Just to add a little bit on what
Steve
was saying there. Sorry, John, to interject there.
That's
but when you look at sort of Mepham and Senesi as well, they both got potentially Senesi, but more so Mepham. They've got World Cups to look forward to.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
Well, Senesi could have a shout as well. He could have
probably
a shout.
In the squad. He's got a pretty good chance of being in the squad. He's got a cap at the moment, but he's definitely up there as someone that can come in for that Argentina squad. So we've got plenty of predictions in the chat at the moment. I'll come to those in a second. Mark and Steve, you have a think. What is your prediction going to be? Just want to thank yet again our monthly supporters for providing for the channel at Buy Me a Coffee. Please, if you have any cash to spare, a one-off donation would be greatly appreciated. Or if you're a monthly member, as Steve below me is here and others that are in the chat are as well, we really do appreciate the support. It helps pay for StreamYard and also goes towards any other expenses that come around for the team as well. So thank you very much for supporting the channel. Let's have a look and see what people have come up with in the comments. We've got AFC Bournemouth, Germany going for a 1-1, so going a bit more conservative. We've got Mark's going for a 3-2. Cameron thinks it'll be a high-scoring game as well, 2-2. Kirk, pleasure to have you along in the chat as well. Hope you feel better soon. He's gone for a 1-1. Sammy seems to have had her coffee or something because she's gone for a 4-2. So I don't know what's going on here. We definitely need to take a clip of that. She's
latched onto Steve's ding dong.
Well, that's a sentence you don't hear very often.
Yeah, Heather's taken a spot and gone for a 3-1 herself, and we've got a Fox's prediction as well of a 4-0. We've got Trapiche going for a 2-1 to the Cherries, and Amanda's gone for 3-2. A lot of high-scoring games here, and we've got Jean as well. Nice to have you along. Jean has gone for the famous 3-1. So, lads, what are we thinking? Mark, what's your score prediction for the match?
Even though, again, I'll repeat myself, I went for a 0-0 to start with at the beginning. I do agree more with Steve, and it's going to be set pieces galore, but I am going to go with a 2-2.
2-2. Okay, Steve, what do you think?
Well, now Mark's done that, I'm sticking 20 quid on a 0-0. Do you know what? He's stole my thunder there a bit because that was what I was going for. But yeah, I'm going to stick with it because I do think it's going to be a bit of a. I mean, historically, we've got. I think, if memory serves me right, we get quite often we draw with Leicester. I think we drew twice with them in the season they won the title.
Yep,
I seem to remember. Yeah, so I'm going to stick with Mark and go for a Desmond as well.
Okay, two Desmonds. As I mentioned in the bit with Lee Chappie, our record against Leicester at the moment, last 2 home games we played against Leicester, we scored 4 goals in both of them. So I don't think that's going to happen this time. Yeah, it was a 4-1. Solanke scored twice in a 4-1 win.
Oh, was that COVID?
Premier League one. That was the COVID one, and the one before
I remember that.
I think was a bit.
Was that Solanke's first goals? Premier League goals.
I don't think that was. It wasn't his first Premier League goals. It might have been. I don't think it was his first goal for us either. But if he did score 2 in that game, I think that was his second and third goals for us. It might have been his
maybe.
And I think the one before that, I think that one was actually 5-1, if I remember correctly. Wasn't that one we actually gave them a bit of a hiding? No, 5-2, if I remember correctly. We gave them a bit of a hiding. in that
Today,
game.
my
scored two
memory's
late
useless
goals.
these days, John.
But anyway, I don't think we're going to be scoring that much. We certainly haven't been putting in towards the chances to get that kind of goal scoring record. I've actually think I'm hanging my hat on our defensive record, and I think we'll get another clean sheet. But our set pieces are good enough, and I think Leicester have been weak defensively. I reckon we could nick a 1-0 win. So I'm going for a low-scoring game, but a high points return. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. One final question. I remember seeing it before because we did have a guest just pop up in the show about 3 minutes ago. Mark, what's the name? Most important question from AFC people on the Germany. What's the name of your cat?
Well, this furry little sod here. I'd like to say it's something catchy and something Bournemouth related. It's not, but it's just Leo. Leo, the
That's
main
still a good name for a cat.
He plays on it well, that's for sure. Trust me, he's all chill now, but you should have seen him before the stream started. He's running all up and down here. He's getting all up. Just leave him there. Just leave him.
We'll leave him there. I am being corrected. Yes, it was 4-2. I don't know why I felt as though it was 5, but I think maybe I'm thinking of a different game where we've scored quite a few against them. But regardless, if it was 4-2 again, I think we'd all very much appreciate those points, and it wouldn't be the snooze fest that it has been over the last couple of nil draws that we've had at home. But we'll see. Anyway, I'm unfortunately not going to be going to this game. I know Mark, you're unable to as well, but Steve, you'll be going.
Of course, yeah, I'll be there.
Everyone, you're Mr. Consistent. You get to every single game there is.
I'm Mr. Very Broke. That's what I am. go to every game.
Well, for those of you that are going, I hope you have a wonderful time. Fingers crossed for 3 points. I'm sure it'll be brilliant to meet up with people. Do come and say hi if you see anyone from the show, and we'll be happy to chat about all things Bournemouth. But in the meantime, thank you very much for joining me, Mark and Steve, on the show.
Pleasure, mate.
Absolute pleasure, John. No problem.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
thank you. And just signing out. Wishing you all the best, Kirk. Hope you get well soon, and look forward to you taking my place again, so that I don't have to deal with all this.
I don't know, John. Yeah. I think you're making a statement for keeping this position. You've got the bar.
I'm doing a Gary O'Neill. That's what I'm doing. But anyway,
yeah, get well, Gaffer.
On that note, we'll say goodbye. But thank you very much for joining us on this preview. And as always, up the cherries.
Up the cherries.
You ids.